an airplane, so to speak. This is a 30,000 foot view day. So last session, we went over kind of an introduction to the book of Ruth. And in this session, I'm going to give you almost like fire hose learning. So I hope that you can track with me and we can kind of get through each of the 4 chapters really fast. And that's the point. When we do inductive study, we want to make sure that we are in a situation where we get a really good overview first. We get some historical context, we get some understanding of what was going on in the narrative, but really understand what the overarching theme is. So let's just dive in. Looking at chapter 1 to start. If we think about it in the most simplest terms, there's famine, there's a family relocation, there's 2 weddings and 3 funerals. So it is a little bit of a wreck, you know, I mean, but that's life. So when I look at understanding, okay, what was it going on in Naomi's mind, right? So Naomi lost her entire family and now she has these 2 women who are her daughters-in-law from a country that is technically not her people. And it's technically people in Moab who they don't usually get along. So when we move forward and understand, okay, no, Naomi is without her boys, right? All of them have died. What would you do? And I'm like, okay, let's go back home. I want to go back home. I need family, like my actual relatives. So when we look at the decision time here, Naomi is set. She's going back. Word on the street is the famine is over. She can go back to Bethlehem and thrive. All right, well, what would you do if you were in the shoes of Ruth or Orpah? All right, so these are the 2 women who married into Ruth's family and now are widowed. So all 3 of them are widowed. So, man, I think about that. That would have been a hard decision. Go back to my family, what I know, what I've grown up with, or go with this woman who's a different culture. She's my, dead husband's mom. I love her. They both loved her. What do I do? Okay, let's think about the journey ahead. They're going back to Bethlehem from Moab. That's depending on where they lived in Moab, they didn't say, but it could have been anywhere from 50 to 75 miles. You're basically going down rocky terrain into the Jordan Valley, walking, and then you're going up to Bethlehem the other way. So either way, it's an uphill battle. So coming from Bethlehem to Moab, you're going to end up going uphill for the last trek, and backwards, same thing. It's down to the Jordan Valley and up to wherever you're going to. And it wasn't super safe for women to be traveling. So they had to figure out a caravan. They had to have they were, for all intents and purposes, they were broke. Right? Women were less than dogs back then. They were nothing. So they had to figure out how to get back. And that was about a 10-day journey. So I think Orpah, they don't say why, but if I think, man, maybe the less risky decision would have been to just stay home. Okay. Ruth, on the other hand, I mean, like if you think about it, when you've ever had to make one of those really crazy decisions that will completely turn your life upside down, have you ever had an experience where that happened and you were so calm about it? It was as if, all right, let's do it. And there was no hemming and hawing, there was no begroaning anything, there was no confusion. It was just a calm sense of resolve. And that's what Ruth had. And that's what's so lovely about her. So moving on to chapter 2, remember, now these are 2 desolate widowers. They have no money, they have no prospects. Right? So all of Elimelech, Ruth's husband, all of his money, his land and everything that he owned is not Naomi's. That's not how it worked back then. They need a redeemer. So understanding my Jewish friends and my Jewish stepmom, and knowing how interestingly and fascinatingly and wildly smart they can be, I think about what went on here. And I think Naomi had a big hand in a lot of this. So Ruth gets to work. Now, Naomi's about 50, maybe a little older. And the only thing that a widow could do to get food in their belly is to glean, right? There's this law, Levitical law, that allowed people who were destitute to kind of trail after the harvesters and pick up any leftovers on the ground. So it was back-breaking work, right? But when I think about Ruth and I think about her dedication to do the hard thing, to do the hard work, and I want to help you understand what gleaning really is. I have a friend who grew up on a wheat farm, and she said it's one of the itchiest things you can get into. It's just backbreaking and sweaty and itchy. And she grew, she's an older woman, so this was years ago when they didn't have like all the crazy equipment they have now. But man, I think about how Ruth must have looked. So think about the first time you ever met your sweetie, right? The person you love. Imagine meeting them for the first time with like wheat stalks, barley stalks in your hair, sweaty mess, it's itchy, got dirt all over, probably some manure on your face, right? Not your best moment. So I think about how interesting that whole scene would have been and how she happened to glean on Boaz, one of their relatives out of all the farms in the land, right? I think about how possibly there was some undercurrent of Naomi in that, but they don't say that, but that's just my thoughts. On chapter 3, we have this grand gesture, and all I can say is yikes. Ruth had to really trust Naomi. Naomi gave her some really interesting instructions. I would have been like, wait, what? Wait, you want me to do what? What now? What was that again? So she told her, get all dolled up, go and don't show yourself to Boaz. Make sure he doesn't see you all dolled up, but just clean yourself and make sure you're all good. Wait until the man is done with the party. So go to the party, don't show yourself. Wait until he's super tired but goes to sleep. So the men would often sleep at the threshing floor area because thieves would come and steal their crop. So they would often sleep there. So they were having this party, and he was merry with wine, right? So he had drank some, they had a party. So he was a little tipsy and very tired. And this is when Naomi tells him to go ahead and lay down at his feet. And by the way, uncover his feet and then lay down at his feet. I mean, this this could have been the most crafty. You hear this all the time in the Bible. And what I think is interesting about the commentaries. You've got evangelical Christian commentaries on this book and this passage, and you've got the Jewish commentaries. They are very different. And by the way, the Jewish people know their own. So I'm going to go with the Jewish commentators on this. The Jewish commentators think that really Naomi was hoping to entrap Boaz. There was no other way. He was an old guy. He was her age. There was no way he was going to ask Ruth to marry him. No way. He was too upright and too noble of a man to think he had a chance with this young, pretty thing. And she said, do this. And the cool thing about the story is who knows what Naomi's intentions are. And that doesn't matter. What matters is Ruth and Boaz are both honorable people, and they both, were above reproach. So she did what she said, but nothing happened, right? And all throughout the Bible, when you start to understand what it means to uncover someone's feet, right? That's a sexual advance. That's, and lay it in the middle of the night when he's drunk and tired, who knows what's going to happen. So I thought that was really interesting. And I just want to encourage you to remember that God had a plan and God knew the hearts of both of these people. So when we get into chapter 4, Boaz wastes no time. I mean, I love this. I love that it's like he got the green light from this girl and he's like, let's go. So he's on a mission. And I think also there's maybe a wee bit of manipulation here because he goes to the gates and he goes to the first in line to be the guardian redeemer, right? The first person who has rights over this. And he tells him about all the land and the money that he'll get if he wants to redeem this. It's his right to redeem. And the guy says, yeah, I'll take it. Who wouldn't? And then he says, oh, but by the way, it comes with Ruth. Now, again, based on Jewish commentaries, like that wasn't necessarily true back then, but meaning like you could take the land and not the girl because there were some other laws that were in place. But nobody was really in the business back then of redeeming. It was sort of a really old Jewish custom that people weren't really paying close attention to if you think about what was going on during the time of Judges. So the guy was like, oh, I have to take this woman. Well, now I don't want that. That's going to impose on my already children and the inheritance they get. And no, we're not going to do that. I don't want to muddy the waters. So he says no. And then Boaz gets the girl. So it's really exciting to understand that this whole story of redemption is huge. And when we think of Boaz as a type of Jesus, right, a type of savior, and Ruth as a type of Gentile nation, that she was an outsider that was able to get grafted into the lineage of Jesus. And that's another point. When we think about why was the book of Ruth written, we think, wow, well, really for veracity. It's verifying the lineage of Christ, and that, man, it doesn't always come from the perfect stories. I mean, yes, this was an amazing story, but what man would write it? What man would let a Moabite woman into the lineage of Jesus, right? It's just wild. And when you think about even Boaz's background, you know, I encourage you to start looking into who his parents were and where he's from. And it's just an interesting thing when you start getting into the backgrounds of all this. So I love this. I want to end on just a simple thing too. When I look at Proverbs 31, what I love about that is, you know, when you read Proverbs 31 against Ruth's character, and when that was written, there's a good chance that was written about Ruth. And so I encourage you to read Ruth today, but also read Proverbs 31, starting at verse 10. And just, man, don't you want to be like that? I mean, Ruth is such a great character to consider. How, you know, how could I be more in line with that? So I hope this has blessed you today. Enjoy, and we will see you for Ruth chapter 1. We're actually going to get diving into Ruth chapter 1 in a couple weeks. All right, take care, guys. Bye.